When we lost hope, Earth's warriors fell from the sky. Hope was not something the galaxy lost all at once. It faded slowly, quietly, like a star that kept shining long after it had already died. The Kelleri conquered had existed for more than 8,000 standard cycles. It was not an empire and never wanted to be one. It was a promise. A promise that knowledge could replace fear, that cooperation could prevent extinction, and that no species would ever face the dark alone again. That promise had held through plagues, dying suns, resource collapses, and even civil disagreements that nearly shattered the alliance. But this time the danger did not argue, threaten, or negotiate. It simply came. The phenomenon did not have a name at first. Scientists tried many. Some called it a wave, others called it a field, a drift, or a cosmic correction. None of the names felt right. It was not alive, but it behaved as if it had intention. It moved from system to system, altering stars, stripping atmospheres, and leaving behind worlds that could no longer support life. Not destroyed, just emptied. No weapons worked on it, energy passed through it. Gravity bent strangely around it. Attempts to study it directly caused instruments to fail in ways no one could explain. The phenomenon ignored borders, fleets, and warnings. It followed rules older than the conquered itself. As the years passed, hope began to weaken. On the world of Kel Prime, observer Lyra Sen stood at the wide window of the high assembly chamber. Beyond the transparent shield, the stars looked calm and unchanged. They always did. Space never showed panic. It never warned anyone. Lyra had spent her life studying disasters. She had believed that preparation could solve anything. Now she watched representatives argue softly, not because they believed debate would save them, but because it was all they had left. Evacuation plans filled entire data vaults, so did failure reports. Entire species were moving, slowly and painfully, from worlds they had evolved on for millions of years. Some refused to leave at all, others left too late. Every cycle, new systems went dark on the map. The conquered fleets were powerful, but power meant nothing against something that did not fight back. They could only watch, measure, and retreat. The vote to send the final broadcast passed without resistance. It was not officially called a request for help. That would have implied belief. Instead, it was recorded as a historical message, a record meant for whoever might exist after the conquered was gone. The broadcast was sent in every known language, repeated across frequencies, and launched toward regions of space marked as low probability for response. One of those regions contained a small yellow star and a young planet called Earth. Earth had joined the conquered only 70 standard cycles earlier. Humans were classified as emotionally intense, physically adaptable, and strategically unpredictable. Their technology lagged behind the major powers. Their political systems were messy. Their history was filled with conflict and recovery again and again. They were not considered a solution. When the broadcast was sent, no one expected an answer. Weeks passed, then months. Hope officially ended the day the conquered council removed future planning from its agenda. From that moment, everything became preservation, memory, and delay. That was when the reply came. It arrived as a compressed signal burst, short and strangely informal. The translation system struggled with its tone. It lacked the ritual language most species used in first contact or crisis communication. The message said only that the signal had been received, understood, and shared. Then, several minutes later, a second message followed. "We're coming, won't be fast, won't be clean. But we won't quit." The chamber fell silent. Some thought it was a mistake. Others suspected a malfunction or a human misunderstanding of the scale involved. A few dismissed it entirely. Humans were known for optimism, sometimes dangerously so, but Lyra felt something shift. Not hope, not yet. Something heavier, something active. Human ships began arriving sooner than predicted and not in the way anyone expected. They did not emerge from established jump points or hyperspace corridors. Instead, they appeared high above populated systems, dropping out of controlled collapse paths. Their vessels burned bright as they entered orbital space, shields flaring, hulls glowing from heat and friction. To the watching fleets, it looked less like arrival and more like falling. Emergency alarms triggered across conquered space. Defense systems powered up automatically, then froze when identification codes confirmed the ships were human. The ships were not sleek or elegant. They were layered, modular, and covered in external structures. Large sections detached during descent, unfolding into platforms, frames, and rings that stabilized themselves with careful precision. Instead of battle formations, the humans formed scaffolds. Instead of weapons arrays, they deployed construction arms, drones, and fabrication units. Massive automated factories began assembling themselves in open space, feeding on raw material harvested from nearby asteroids. The humans did not ask permission first. They sent updates constantly, explaining what they were building, why they were building it, and how fast they could adapt it if something went wrong. Their communication style was direct, fast, and filled with notes about risk, failure rates, and backup plans. Observer Lyra was assigned as the primary liaison, mostly because she asked first. She met the human commander via projection. He looked tired, not wounded, not afraid, just deeply, completely tired. "We know this won't stop it," he said. "If it could be stopped, you'd have done it already." Lyra asked what they planned to do instead. The human paused, choosing his words carefully. "We plan to make sure people are still alive after it passes." The first human structures were deployed around Kel Prime itself. Massive energy diffusion fields were installed, not to block the phenomenon, but to slow its effects and redirect harmful changes away from population centers. Underground habitats were expanded. Atmosphere recycling systems were reinforced beyond standard safety margins. Human engineers worked alongside conquered specialists without hierarchy. They shared tools, argued openly, corrected each other, and laughed more than Lyra thought was appropriate under the circumstances. Human civilians arrived next, not soldiers, families, specialists. Medical teams, children. When questioned, the humans explained simply that evacuation without community was survival without meaning. If people had to leave their worlds, they would not do it alone. The phenomenon drew closer. Stars ahead of it dimmed slightly, not in brightness, but in character. Sensors showed reality itself behaving differently in its presence. The conquered prepared for loss. Human preparations intensified. Entire cities were partially dismantled and reassembled into mobile habitats. Cultural archives were converted into living spaces, so history would not be something locked away. Humans encouraged other species to modify their traditions, not abandon them. "Adaptation doesn't mean forgetting," one human historian explained. "It means carrying what matters in a form that survives." When the first wave reached the outer systems, panic did not spread. Not because fear was gone, but because there was work to do. Lyra watched from orbit as the phenomenon passed through an uninhabited test system. The changes were immediate and terrifying, but the human-built platforms held, the shelters functioned. Life support remained stable. The system was damaged, but not dead. That realization spread faster than any broadcast. For the first time since the crisis began, species across the conquered did not ask how to stop the end. They asked how to live through it. And above it all, more human ships continued to fall from the sky, burning, shaking, holding together through stubborn design and refusal to fail. Hope had not returned, but survival had. And for the first time in a very long time, the galaxy leaned forward instead of bracing for the dark. The phenomenon did not announce itself when it finally reached the heart of the conquered. It did not roar or flash or break the sky. It simply arrived, like a quiet rule of the universe being enforced at last. Observer Lyra Sen was inside one of the deep shelters beneath Kel Prime when the sensors confirmed it. The moment carried no drama, only a heavy stillness. Around her, representatives of many species sat together in shared silence, listening to data streams and soft human voices giving calm updates. The human systems reacted exactly as planned. Energy fields shifted, not to resist, but to bend. Atmosphere processors worked harder. Gravity anchors adjusted by fractions so small they felt unreal. The planet groaned not in pain but in effort. Above the world the stars changed. It was subtle but unmistakable. Light bent differently. Time measurements drifted. Physics itself seemed less certain, like it was thinking about becoming something else. Many believed this would be the breaking point. It was not. The shelters held. The habitats stabilized. The humans had built everything with failure in mind, not perfection. When one system weakened, another took over. When a platform warped, it was detached and replaced within hours. People did not panic. They helped. Species that once would not share air now shared tools. Children learned 3 new languages in a week because they played together in crowded corridors. Elders taught stories not as history lessons, but as reminders of identity. The phenomenon passed over Kel Prime in less than 2 standard days. When it moved on, the world was changed. The skies looked slightly different. Some natural cycles were altered forever, but the planet was alive. That truth echoed through the Conquered like a shockwave. Worlds that had expected silence reported survival, not untouched survival. Scarred survival, but survival that could grow, learn, and continue. The humans did not celebrate. They checked systems. They counted losses. They repaired what could be repaired and recorded what could not. Their grief was quiet and brief, not because it was small, but because there was still work to do. The phenomenon continued its path and the humans followed, not chasing it, moving with it. Wherever it went, human-built shelters appeared ahead of time. Entire populations were relocated into prepared environments. Species learned how to live in conditions they once thought impossible. Some planets were lost. The humans did not deny this. They did not promise miracles, they promised effort. On one distant world, a species refused help. They believed leaving their surface meant losing their soul. Humans listened. Then they stayed anyway, helping them redesign their cities underground, preserving open spaces through projected skies and artificial suns. When the phenomenon passed, that world survived too. Years went by. The Conquered changed. It was no longer centered on stable worlds and permanent stars. It became mobile, adaptive, and shared in ways no charter had ever planned. Humans helped rewrite those rules not by force but by example. Observer Lyra aged through the crisis. Her scales dulled slightly. Her movements slowed. But she continued to watch, record, and learn. One day, long after the phenomenon had passed beyond Conquered space, she was invited to a human memorial. It was not held on a grand world or station. It was inside a quiet habitat orbiting a rebuilt system. The humans gathered without ceremony. Names were read. Stories were shared. Then the gathering ended and people returned to work, life, and rest. Lyra asked a human engineer why they did not mark the event more loudly. The engineer thought for a moment. Because this wasn't about winning, she said. It was about not giving up. As centuries passed, the phenomenon faded into history. Not myth, not legend. A documented event with clear data and lasting consequences. The galaxy was forever changed. Some stars would never behave the same. Some species would never return to their original forms. But extinction, the absolute end, had been avoided. The Conquered built a new warning system, one meant not for enemies, but for disasters beyond intention. It watched the dark edges of space, listening for patterns older than fear. Its symbol was chosen carefully. It showed a human figure, descending through fire, arms open, body unbroken, not falling in defeat. Arriving. Future generations would ask why humans had answered the call when so many others could not. The answer was recorded in simple words, taken from one of the earliest human messages sent during the crisis. On Earth, the world ends all the time. Floods, storms, failures, mistakes. We don't survive because we are strongest. We survive because we practice starting again. And so, when hope had died and the galaxy had prepared for silence, Earth's warriors had fallen from the sky. Not to fight the universe. Time did not return to what it was after the phenomenon passed. It moved forward, but it moved differently, as if it had learned caution. Years became decades. Decades became quiet centuries. The Conquered still existed, but it no longer thought of itself as permanent. Nothing was permanent now. Worlds shifted. Orbits were adjusted. Species adapted bodies, cultures, and beliefs to survive in places their ancestors would never have imagined. Humans remained. They did not rule. They did not command. They stayed. On Kel Prime, observer Lyra Sen had long since stepped down from official duty. Her title still followed her, but it meant less now. The galaxy had learned that titles did not save lives. People did. She lived in a modest habitat near the rebuilt capital, where architecture from a dozen species blended into something new. Human designs were everywhere, but they never erased what came before. They wrapped around it, reinforced it, and made room for change. Lyra spent her days teaching. Younglings from many species gathered in open halls to hear stories about the old Conquered, about static worlds and fixed borders. To them, the idea of never moving felt strange, almost frightening. They asked many questions about the humans. Why did they come? Why did they help strangers? Why did they stay after it was over? Lyra always answered honestly. Because they believed over was not a real thing, she said. Human settlements grew slowly but steadily across Conquered space. Not colonies in the old sense, more like anchors. Places where trade, learning, and recovery naturally formed. Humans were still unpredictable. They argued loudly. They experimented recklessly. They failed often. But they failed forward. A new generation of humans had been born who never saw Earth before it changed. Their homeworld still existed, but it was no longer the center of human identity. Earth was a beginning, not a boundary. These humans grew up alongside other species, learning multiple ways to breathe, think, and feel. They did not see the conquered as others. It was simply home. Not everyone was comfortable with that. Some older species feared that humanity's influence was too strong, not through force, but through presence. Humans adapted so easily that others worried they would eventually redefine what it meant to be part of the galaxy at all. A council was formed to discuss this concern. Lyra was invited as an observer once more. The debate was tense but controlled. No one accused humans of wrongdoing. There was nothing to accuse. Instead, the fear was quiet and philosophical. What if we become like them? One delegate asked. What if we lose ourselves? A human representative responded calmly. You won't become human, she said. You'll become survivable. The word hung in the chamber. Survivable, not dominant, not superior, able to continue. The council ended without resolution, but something shifted. The fear did not disappear, but it softened. The galaxy had learned, painfully, that survival sometimes required becoming something new. The warning system remained active at the edge of known space. For centuries, it detected nothing. Then one day, it detected something familiar. Not the same phenomenon, but something that followed similar rules. The signal did not trigger panic this time. Instead, protocols activated automatically. Preparations began without debate. Mobile habitats shifted into position. Data was shared openly and instantly. Humans did not rush ahead alone. They worked with everyone. The younger species watched this response with awe. To them, this was not heroism. It was routine. That frightened Lyra more than the first crisis ever had. Not because it was dangerous, but because it meant the galaxy had changed forever. The new anomaly passed near conquered space, altered a few uninhabited systems, and moved on. No lives were lost. No worlds evacuated. Afterward, there were no grand speeches, just quiet relief. Lyra knew then that the true legacy of humanity was not the shelters, or the technology, or even the survival. It was the removal of helplessness. Before humans, the galaxy believed there were limits beyond which nothing could be done. Humans had disagreed. Late in her life, Lyra traveled to Earth. It was not the Earth described in old records. The seas had changed. Some continents were reshaped. Cities were different, rebuilt again and again. But the planet felt alive in a way no archive could describe. She stood beneath an open sky with a human guide, watching children run through a park that had once been a disaster zone. You rebuilt this? She asked. The guide smiled slightly. No, he said. We kept it going. Lyra understood. Earth was not a monument, it was a process. As her life came to its end, Lyra recorded one final message for the conquered archives. She spoke slowly, choosing simple words. When the darkness came, we thought warriors would save us. We imagined fleets, weapons, victories. She paused. What arrived were people who refused to accept endings. Her message was stored, copied, and shared across systems. Generations later, children of many species would hear it and think it was obvious. That was humanity's final gift, not survival, normalizing survival. And so the galaxy continued, changed, scarred, alive. And whenever a new danger appeared at the edge of the dark, no one asked if something could be done. They asked who would arrive first, because everyone remembered the day Earth's warriors fell from the sky and taught the universe how to stand back up. The galaxy did not fear the dark anymore, but it respected it. Long after Observer Lyra Sen's words became part of every shared archive, the conquered entered what historians later called the long, steady age. It was not an age of peace because peace suggested rest. It was an age of readiness. Worlds still failed. Stars still behaved strangely. Accidents still happened. But no one froze when they did. Humans had changed that. On the outer edge of conquered space, there was a moving habitat known simply as Drift Haven. It had no permanent orbit. It traveled slowly between systems, carrying specialists, learners, families, and archives. It was not owned by any one species. Humans had designed it, but they had insisted it never belonged to them alone. Drift Haven existed for one purpose, to respond. Inside the habitat, life was ordinary in ways that would have seemed impossible centuries earlier. Markets were loud, schools were crowded. Repair crews argued over efficiency while sharing meals. No one spoke of heroism, they spoke of schedules. A human woman named Mara walked through the central corridor, reviewing reports on a wrist display. She was not famous. She had no special rank. She coordinated response logistics, a job that required patience more than brilliance. Mara had been born in space. Earth was something she had visited once as a child. She remembered its gravity feeling too heavy and its sky too wide. To her, the conquered was home. She stopped near a transparent wall where a group of non-human children pressed close, watching a small engineering drone practice delicate maneuvers. One child asked her why the drone kept making mistakes. "So it learns," Mara said simply. That answer satisfied them. An alert came in quietly, as all alerts did now. No alarms, no panic tones, just information. A star near the fringe had begun producing irregular emissions, not dangerous yet but unfamiliar. Within minutes, Drift Haven adjusted course. Across conquered space, other habitats shifted slightly. Data flowed freely. No one waited for orders. They waited only long enough to understand. Mara attended a coordination meeting with representatives from 12 species. The discussion was calm and focused. Possibilities were listed, risks were acknowledged. No one asked if it could be ignored. That question had been removed from the culture long ago. As preparations continued, an elder from a long-lived species spoke softly. "Before humans," he said, "this would have caused fear." A younger delegate responded without hesitation. "Before humans," she said, "we would have waited too long." The response was not meant as praise. It was simply accurate. Drift Haven arrived at the system days before the star reached critical instability. Platforms were deployed. Sensors mapped variables no one had seen before. Predictive models failed and were immediately replaced. Humans worked alongside others, offering ideas, accepting corrections, discarding plans without attachment. Mara watched a human technician and a Kalari physicist argue intensely for several minutes, then laugh when a third species offered a solution neither had considered. The platform held. The star stabilized enough to prevent system-wide collapse. It would never behave normally again, but life around it could continue. The response was logged as successful. No celebration followed. The conquered did not reward survival. It expected it. Years later, stories of the early crisis began to sound unreal to the younger generations. The idea that entire species once believed extinction was unavoidable felt distant and strange. That worried some of the elders. They feared complacency. A symposium was held to discuss cultural memory. Humans attended, listening carefully. One elder spoke directly to them. "You changed us," he said. "Now we fear forgetting why," a human historian replied. "Then teach the fear," she said, "but teach it with context." She explained that humans did not remember disasters by freezing them in time. They remembered by integrating them into daily life. Emergency drills became games. Backup systems became standard. Failure became expected, not catastrophic. The galaxy adopted this mindset slowly, unevenly, but steadily. Not everyone approved. A faction formed among several species who believed the conquered had lost its sense of meaning. They argued that constant adaptation eroded identity. That survival without stability was a kind of slow loss. They did not attack. They did not rebel. They withdrew. Entire populations chose to settle on isolated worlds, rejecting shared systems and mobile habitats. Humans did not stop them. They offered support anyway. Mara oversaw the final supply transfers to one such group. She asked their leader if they were afraid. "We are," the leader admitted, "but we choose what we fear." Mara nodded. "That's fair," she said. Decades passed. Mara aged slowly. Humans still lived shorter lives than many species, but medicine and environment extended them beyond old expectations. She trained replacements. She documented mistakes. One day, while reviewing old data, she found Lyra Sen's final message. She read it carefully, then read it again. It struck her that Lyra had not spoken of humans as saviors. She had spoken of them as teachers, even if they never meant to be. That night, Myra wrote a note for the archives. "Humans did not bring hope back," she wrote. "They taught us how to work without it." The note was accepted without commentary. Far beyond conquered space, something watched, not the phenomenon, not a force of destruction. An intelligence, old and patient, observed the patterns of survival spreading outward. It did not understand them. Its own kind had long believed that collapse was a natural end. It noted that where humans appeared, collapse slowed. This confused it. The intelligence did not act. It waited. Back in the conquered, Drift Haven continued its slow journey. New habitats joined it. Others retired. The system evolved. One day, a message arrived from far beyond known space. It was not a distress call. It was not a threat. It was a question. How do you continue? The message was debated carefully. Some feared it was a trap. Others feared misunderstanding. Humans argued neither side strongly. We answer, Mara said, now older, her hair gray, because someone once answered us. The reply was sent, simple and unadorned. We plan, we fail. We adjust together. The response that came back was silent for a long time. Then slowly, cautiously, communication resumed. Contact was established. The galaxy did not celebrate, it prepared. Mara did not live to see what came next. She passed quietly, surrounded by people from many worlds, her work complete enough. Her name joined many others in the archives, not as heroes, as participants. Centuries later, when new dangers appeared, when new questions formed, no one asked why humans had mattered so much. They asked how they could behave the same way. And every answer, in one form or another, traced back to the moment when the galaxy had lost hope, and humans had arrived anyway. Not because they believed they could win, but because stopping was never an option they accepted. And so the conquered endured, not untouched, not perfect,